The best way to learn English. Alex gazed at the English textbook, a deep sigh escaping. The journey to master English felt endlessly long, filled with confusing grammar rules and vocabulary lists that never stuck. Every new lesson brought a fresh wave of frustration, making the goal of fluent conversation seem utterly unattainable. The sheer volume of words alone was overwhelming. Traditional methods often felt like a chore, devoid of genuine connection or real-world application. Alex spent hours memorizing, only to forget everything the next day. The classroom environment provided little inspiration, and the pressure to perform perfectly stifled any natural inclination to experiment or take linguistic risks. It was disheartening. But the biggest fear was speaking. The thought of opening his mouth and mispronouncing words, or worse, not being understood at all, filled Alex with dread. His mind would race, desperately searching for the right phrases, only to draw a blank. That hesitation made interaction almost impossible. One afternoon, a friend, who seemed to effortlessly converse in English, offered a simple piece of advice. "Forget the textbooks for a bit," she suggested. "Just start reading. Anything you find interesting, even children's books." Alex was skeptical. How could reading alone be the best way to learn English? Alex had always associated reading with quiet study, not with dynamic language acquisition. The idea seemed counterintuitive for improving speaking skills, which was the main goal. Yet, desperate for a new approach, Alex picked up a graded reader, a simplified version of a classic British tale, with a hesitant curiosity. The first few pages were a struggle, but the story's charm slowly drew Alex in. Instead of focusing on individual words, Alex tried to grasp the overall meaning, letting the narrative flow. It was a refreshing change from dissecting sentences for grammatical components. This felt more organic, less like a task. Slowly, new words started to make sense within their context. Instead of looking up every unknown term, Alex began guessing meanings from the surrounding sentences. It was surprising how many words could be understood just by their placement in the story, making the learning process feel more intuitive and natural. This realization, that why reading is so important, was a breakthrough. Vocabulary wasn't just isolated words anymore, it was part of a living tapestry of language. Each new story introduced different settings, characters, and situations, embedding new expressions deeply into Alex's subconscious, almost without conscious effort. As Alex continued to read, a subtle transformation occurred. Sentence structures that once seemed complicated started to feel familiar. The rhythm of English sentences began to imprint itself on Alex's mind. Reading provided a consistent, gentle immersion, building a strong linguistic foundation day by day. Stories became the gateway to understanding the flow of natural conversation. They provided examples of dialogue, revealing how characters interacted and expressed emotions. This direct exposure to authentic language usage was far more effective than abstract grammar exercises, making communication seem less daunting. With reading firmly established, Alex decided to expand into listening. Specifically, the crisp, varied sounds of British English appealed to Alex. Online, a wealth of resources opened up: podcasts, radio dramas, and documentaries. This was a new layer to how to improve your English. Listening to native British speakers, Alex started noticing the subtle differences in pronunciation and intonation. How other people talk in English, particularly the diverse accents, became a fascinating study. It wasn't just about understanding words, it was about grasping the melody of the language. Alex immersed in British TV shows, often with English subtitles first, then without. This helped to bridge the gap between spoken words and their written forms. It was a conscious effort to absorb the natural speed and colloquialisms, pushing the boundaries of passive listening. The next big hurdle remained: speaking. How to make confidence in speaking when every conversation felt like a performance. Alex realized that consistent practice English was the only way forward, no matter how uncomfortable it might initially feel. The fear had to be confronted head-on. Alex started small, speaking to reflections in the mirror, describing daily routines, or narrating thoughts aloud. This private practice allowed for mistakes without public embarrassment. It was a safe space to experiment with new vocabulary and phrases, building a personal comfort zone. Then, Alex found online language exchange partners. The initial conversations were nerve-wracking, filled with pauses and fumbled words. But each interaction, no matter how short, was a victory. The supportive environment of fellow learners helped ease the pressure significantly. Let's talk in British English. Alex would often suggest, eager to practice the specific nuances learned from listening. These conversations became opportunities to apply newly acquired phrases and to mimic the intonation patterns observed in podcasts. It felt like playing a game. Alex also practiced by summarizing books and articles aloud, forcing the brain to process information and articulate it in English. This not only reinforced vocabulary but also improved the ability to form coherent sentences quickly, reducing hesitation during spontaneous speech. Learning English through stories continued to be a core strategy. Every time Alex finished a book, new words were highlighted and added to a personal vocabulary notebook. But crucially, these words weren't isolated. They came with the context of the entire narrative, making them easier to recall. This contextual learning was essential for how to learn words effectively. Instead of memorizing definitions, Alex remembered the scene, the character, or the emotion associated with the word. This method transformed vocabulary acquisition from a tedious task into an engaging narrative exploration. Alex also paid close attention to how other people talk in English, especially native speakers. Noticing common idioms, filler words, and natural pauses helped to make Alex's own speech sound more authentic and less robotic. It was about observing the living language in action. Observing the flow of conversations, the use of polite phrases, and even the subtle body language that accompanied speech, all contributed to a deeper understanding. Alex realized that communication was much more than just grammar and vocabulary. It was about cultural context too. The journey of how to improve your English became an enjoyable exploration rather than a daunting climb. Each small success, from understanding a complex sentence in a novel to holding a short conversation, fueled the motivation to continue pushing forward, learning more. Alex started actively seeking out more complex material, moving from graded readers to authentic novels and nonfiction. This continuous exposure to varied texts solidified the vocabulary base and broadened the understanding of different writing styles and registers. The best way to learn English, Alex concluded, was not a single path but a mosaic of interconnected activities. Reading, listening, and speaking were all pieces of a larger puzzle, each reinforcing the others in a virtuous cycle of language acquisition. Consistent practice English became non-negotiable. Even on busy days, Alex would dedicate at least 30 minutes to listening to a podcast or reading a chapter. This daily habit ensured continuous progress and prevented skills from stagnating over time. Confidence in speaking slowly but surely blossomed. The fear of making mistakes diminished as Alex understood that errors were merely stepping stones, not roadblocks. Every misstep provided valuable feedback, highlighting areas that needed more attention and practice. Learning English through stories proved to be the most impactful method for Alex. The emotional connection to characters and plots made the language unforgettable. Stories provided a natural, low-stress environment to absorb complex grammatical structures and expand vocabulary effortlessly. Alex realized that the emotional engagement derived from stories significantly enhanced retention. When a word was encountered in a dramatic moment, it imprinted itself more deeply than if it were just on a list. This made the learning process much more effective. The sheer joy of immersing oneself in a good story also counteracted the feeling of studying. It transformed a chore into a pleasure, making the daily habit of interacting with English something to look forward to, rather than dread. Alex found specific joy in the subtleties of "Let's Talk in British English" sessions. The distinct vocabulary, the different nuances in phrases, and even the unique humor resonated deeply, adding another rich layer to the language learning experience. These focused British English conversations helped fine-tune listening skills for specific accents and intonations. It was a targeted approach to mastering a particular variety of English, broadening understanding beyond a generic, standard version. How to learn words became an integrated process within reading and listening. Alex started using a digital flashcard system that allowed for context sentences, not just single words. This reinforced understanding of usage, not just definition. The practice of grouping related words, or lexical chunks, also proved highly effective. Learning phrases like "to hit the road" or "to bite the bullet" as single units, rather than individual words, accelerated the naturalness of Alex's speech. How other people talk in English served as a constant learning resource. Alex would mentally note interesting expressions or sentence structures encountered in everyday conversations or media, then try to incorporate them into personal practice sessions. This observational learning was crucial for moving beyond textbook English to authentic, natural communication. It taught Alex how to sound less like a student and more like a fluent speaker by mimicking genuine interaction patterns and rhythms. Alex discovered that the best way to learn English truly involved embracing every opportunity. From reading street signs to deciphering song lyrics, every interaction with the language became a mini lesson, contributing to overall improvement. The transformation in Alex's confidence was remarkable. The hesitant speaker who dreaded conversation had evolved into someone eager to engage, sharing thoughts and ideas without the paralyzing fear of error. It was liberating. Why reading is so important became clearer with each passing month. It was the silent, steady engine that powered vocabulary growth and grammatical understanding, laying a robust foundation for all other language skills to flourish upon. Learning English through stories cultivated not just linguistic competence but also a genuine love for the language and its cultures. Each book felt like a journey, each character a friend, making the entire learning process deeply personal and rewarding. How to practice English effectively was no longer a mystery. It involved consistent, varied engagement, active reading, immersive listening, deliberate speaking, and thoughtful vocabulary acquisition, all intertwined for maximum impact and retention. How to make confidence in speaking became less about perfecting every word and more about embracing communication. The focus shifted from being right to being understood, which freed Alex to express thoughts more naturally and spontaneously. Alex also learned the value of context when learning new words. Instead of isolated terms, vocabulary was absorbed as part of phrases, idioms, and natural expressions. This approach significantly boosted recall and application in real conversations. Regularly reviewing previously learned vocabulary in different contexts further solidified retention. Alex would revisit old stories, listen to familiar podcasts, or even try to explain new concepts using recently acquired words, actively reinforcing them. How other people talk in English became a continuous lesson in nuance. Alex keenly observed informal versus formal speech, regional variations, and how emotions were conveyed through tone and pace. This rich observation enriched personal expression. Let's Talk in British English sessions were particularly insightful for cultural understanding. They exposed Alex to specific cultural references, humor, and social etiquette, going beyond mere linguistic competency to true cultural fluency. The journey was a testament to patience and persistence. There were still challenging moments, of course, but the initial overwhelming feeling had been replaced by a deep sense of accomplishment and a genuine passion for the English language. Alex often reflected on the initial fear of speaking. Now, the idea of engaging in a conversation, whether casual or formal, was exciting. The transformation was profound, marking the shift from a passive learner to an active communicator. The best way to learn English, it turned out, was not a single, rigid method but a flexible, adaptive approach. It was about finding joy in the process and making English a part of daily life, not just a subject to be studied. Reading stories remained foundational, providing a constant influx of natural language and building an intuitive understanding of grammar and vocabulary. It was the silent mentor, guiding Alex through the complexities of English with engaging narratives. How to improve your English continuously involved seeking out diverse materials and challenging oneself with new contexts. This meant branching out into different genres of books, varying podcast topics, and watching a wider range of films. The initial query, how to learn English, had evolved into a living, breathing process. It wasn't about reaching a finish line but about embracing a lifelong journey of discovery and refinement, always finding new ways to grow. Alex now understood that how to learn words was about deep integration rather than superficial memorization. Words lived in sentences, in stories, in conversations. They were tools for expression, not just isolated entries in a dictionary. The journey was proof that consistent, enjoyable exposure, especially through captivating narratives, could transform daunting tasks into delightful progress. Alex's fluency was a testament to the power of stories and persistent practice. And so, Alex continued the English adventure, always reading, always listening, always talking, and always learning. The world of English was no longer a barrier but an open door, inviting endless possibilities for connection and understanding.